On a sunny morning, Min's family decided to go camping in a remote forest, far from the city. This was a trip they had planned for a long time, hoping to enjoy a relaxing weekend away from the hustle and bustle of modern life. Min, the father with years of backpacking experience, was confident that this would be a wonderful experience for his wife and 2 children. But something unusual began to unfold right from the start of their journey. They drove along the dusty red road, passing through endless green forests with no sign of other people. After a while, the road began to narrow and drift further away from residential areas. Though Min had traveled this road many times before, today he felt a strange sensation. The air in the forest seemed heavier, and the trees appeared to bow down as if welcoming them. His wife, Lan, felt a sense of unease, but didn't say anything, quietly observing everything around them. When they arrived, the sunlight slowly faded, replaced by a gloomy sky. They set up their tent and prepared dinner, but no one spoke much. A strange feeling lingered among them. While they were starting the campfire, suddenly, a strange noise came from deep within the forest, as if something or someone was moving. Lan turned to Min, her face pale, but Min just laughed and said it was probably some wild animal. However, the silence quickly returned to the campsite, and no one said another word. After dinner, the family sat together around the campfire. The surrounding sounds seemed to settle, but a strange silence still hung in the air. Suddenly, the light of the fire flared brightly, making them all look toward it. When their eyes adjusted, they saw a figure standing at the edge of the forest, motionless and silently staring at them. No one in the family dared to speak. Only the rustling of the wind startled them. Then, the figure disappeared quickly, as if it had never been there. When the figure disappeared, the atmosphere returned to stillness, but an unease lingered in everyone's heart. Min's family decided to stay around the campfire, though each of them felt an inexplicable worry. Night had fallen, and the forest around them grew livelier with the hum of insects. However, the silence of this night felt different from others. The whole family began to feel as though eyes were watching them, an overwhelming and suffocating sensation. The sensation grew stronger as they heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching, as if someone was coming from deep within the forest. But when they looked around, there was no one there. This sight left the whole family silent, exchanging fearful glances. Min stood up, holding the flashlight, trying to locate the source of the noise. But there was nothing but endless darkness. It's probably just some animals. Min tried to reassure his family, but no one felt at ease. As the night grew deeper, the unease in the family grew stronger. Strange sounds kept echoing from afar. The unexplainable noises kept repeating, as if something was lurking. Suddenly, a scream rang out from within the forest, startling the whole family. Lan, Min's wife, frantically looked around, her face pale with fear. The family immediately dropped everything and rushed toward their car to leave the forest. But when they reached the spot where the car should have been, they discovered something strange. Their car was gone. With no other choice, Min decided to search the area, hoping to find their car, or at least a trace of it. The whole family walked along the narrow trail, trying to return to where they had parked. However, After walking for a while, they realized that this path wasn't the same as the one they had taken earlier. Everything around them seemed to have changed. The towering trees they had seen earlier now looked different, and the darkness seemed thicker. By this point, Min's family had no choice but to continue walking. They followed the narrow trail, hoping to find a trace of their car, or at least some recognizable area. But contrary to expectations, they walked for what seemed like forever, without finding any sign of the outside world. The scenery in the forest seemed to change with every step they took, with trees becoming more withered and gloomy. Even the branches seemed to claw at them, as if trying to stop their progress. Good. As they ventured farther, they stumbled upon a strange footprint on the ground, a small print that seemed to belong to a child. It led them into an unfamiliar part of the forest that they had never seen before. These footprints were the only sign they had found in this dark forest. They didn't dare believe that a child could be wandering in this forest, but they couldn't ignore this trace. The family continued to follow the footprints, though a part of them feared that they might be venturing into a dangerous area. Finally, the footprints led them to an old wooden house, half shrouded in darkness. This house seemed like it had been abandoned for a long time, but there were no signs of decay. The wooden walls were faded with time, the windows pitch dark, and the house seemed to be hiding itself in the shadows. The air around the house was very cold, in stark contrast to the warm atmosphere of the surrounding forest. Min and Lan decided to approach to investigate, though they felt a strange and unexplainable sense of foreboding. As they approached the house, the door suddenly opened in an eerie manner. No one was inside, but a cold gust of wind blew out, carrying the musty and aged smell from within. Min stepped inside first, moving cautiously with each step. The whole family entered the house, but when they turned around, they realized that the door had closed behind them. No one remembered if they had closed it, and now the house was completely silent, except for the sound of their footsteps on the old wooden floor. A soft noise from upstairs echoed, as if someone was moving up there. As Min's family entered the house, the atmosphere grew heavier and more unsettling. The sounds from upstairs became clearer with each step. Min gestured for his wife and children to stay quiet. But as he ascended the stairs, the footsteps suddenly stopped. Then, a whisper from behind echoed, "Don't go upstairs." The family turned around to see a shadowy figure standing at the bottom of the stairs, its face unrecognizable. The air grew icy, and fear began to spread throughout the room. A sudden cold gust of wind blew through, causing the wooden door to open, revealing a dark room inside. Min, with no other choice, decided to approach the figure. When he entered the room, a strange sight unfolded before his eyes. There were paintings hanging on the walls, but strangely, they weren't ordinary paintings. They depicted Min's family, portraits of him, Lan, and the children, but with hollow, lifeless eyes. The paintings seemed to be watching him. While Min's family stood motionless, the largest painting on the wall suddenly lit up, casting a strange light across the room. A faint laugh echoed from the shadows, and then a figure appeared from within the painting. It was the image of a woman with a cold stare and a twisted smile. The family couldn't believe their eyes. The woman in the painting looked exactly like Lan, But there was something different. She wasn't Lon, but the resemblance was uncanny. "Who is she?" Min asked, his voice trembling. The woman in the painting replied in a cold voice, "She is the one who came before you, just like you, dragged into this endless loop." Suddenly, the painting began to shift, and the images of Min's family started to fade, replaced by strange scenes, children trapped in darkness, hollow faces, and unfamiliar landscapes. Min felt as if he and his family were being drawn into something they couldn't escape from. Min felt a chill down his spine as he heard a soft laugh in the room. The figure of the woman in the painting still standing there, staring at them with her hollow eyes. As the light from the painting grew brighter, a secret door in the room began to open. The door creaked loudly, as if it hadn't been opened in ages. Min and Lon couldn't resist. They decided to move through the secret door. A strange feeling overwhelmed them, as they felt like they were stepping into another dimension, a space that didn't belong to this world. Upon entering, Min's family realized this wasn't an ordinary room. Everything around them was imbued with the marks of the past. From old wooden tables, worn-out chairs, to the paintings on the walls, the room looked like a storage of forgotten memories. Everything was silent, and a heavy feeling overwhelmed them. But what was truly strange was that this room seemed to have no exit. Min's family realized they were trapped in this room. Every time they retraced the same path, they found themselves back at the starting point. The main door had disappeared, replaced by a thick wooden wall. Min hurriedly searched for any way out, but all paths led to a dead end. At this moment, Lon suddenly noticed a mirror hanging on the wall, and the reflection in the mirror was her own face. But something was terribly different. She was no longer herself. Lon's reflection in the mirror began to change, becoming wrinkled and distorted. Before long, the image in the mirror was no longer her, but a woman they had never met. The woman in the mirror smiled grotesquely and suddenly said, "You will never leave." The whole family exchanged terrified glances. The images in the mirror kept shifting, and finally, the door in the room reappeared. But this time, the door wasn't just an exit. It was a gateway to another world. The whole family stood before the strange door, none of them daring to step through. Min felt a strong pull from inside, as if someone was beckoning them to enter. But inside, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread growing stronger. Everything seemed too unreal, and he began to wonder whether this was the end or just the beginning of a new journey. But then, a whisper echoed from within the space, this time not from the woman's figure, but from a different voice. "We cannot leave until the ritual is completed." As the whisper echoed, Min and Lon exchanged anxious looks. They realized they weren't just lost in the forest, but had been caught in a loop they couldn't escape from. And in order to free themselves, they had to complete a ritual they knew nothing about. A sense of guilt and fear overwhelmed the family, but they couldn't turn back. Min, with all his determination, stepped through the door. Inside was a different world, a dark forest with shadowy figures standing, waiting. stepping into the forest. Min felt a powerful shift in the space around him. The shadowy figures surrounding him seemed to be moving, but none of them spoke. A strange figure appeared before Min, and it said, "Only one can leave. The other will be trapped forever." Min's family now faced a difficult choice. Who would sacrifice themselves, and who would be freed as the last light from the flashlight dimmed? Min realized that this choice would determine the fate of the entire family. Min looked into the eyes of his wife and children, and a painful decision that couldn't be avoided weighed heavily on him. He looked toward the door, the faint light slowly fading. In the final moment, Min stepped forward, seemingly accepting his fate. But as he approached the door, everything began to change. A powerful gust of wind blew through, and the door vanished. Min realized that no one had to sacrifice themselves, and his entire family would be freed. The only thing he felt at that moment was peace and freedom. On an early autumn morning, Tuan's family decided to spend a weekend in the vast forest far from the city. This camping trip was something the family had been eagerly awaiting, hoping to enjoy the fresh air and spend quality time together. Tuan, the confident father, had meticulously planned the trip, hoping to give his wife and 2 children a wonderful experience. But right from the start, they began to feel that something was off. As they drove down the narrow road leading into the forest, the atmosphere around them began to change. Although it was still bright outside, the space felt eerily silent, as if all the sounds from the outside world had stopped. The tall trees lining the road seemed so ancient that they appeared to bow down, welcoming them into another world. However, Tuan's wife, felt an uneasy feeling stirring within her. When they arrived at the campsite, the air in the forest grew unnaturally cold. Tuan and his wife, along with their children, set up the tent and prepared dinner. However, the silence that enveloped the area made everything feel strange. While starting the campfire, suddenly, a noise echoed from deep within the forest, as if someone was moving. But when they looked around, there was nothing but darkness. Mai felt uneasy, but Tuan tried to reassure the family, saying it was probably the sound of wild animals. After dinner, the whole family sat around the campfire. The air around them remained eerily silent. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the forest. Tuan's family froze, not daring to speak. The whole atmosphere became tense. Then, the figure vanished quickly, leaving Tuan's family confused and unsettled. After the shadowy figure disappeared, Min's family tried to calm down. However, none of them could shake off the strange feeling lingering in their hearts. As the night deepened, the forest around them grew eerily quiet. The natural sounds seemed to vanish, leaving only the soft rustle of branches. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew, causing their tent to shake and collapse. For a moment, everything became chaotic, and a faint scream echoed from the forest, startling the whole family. As the faint scream subsided, the family stood still, waiting to see what would happen next. Min quickly stood up, staring into the dark forest. He tried to remain calm, saying it might have been the noise of an animal, but deep down, he knew this wasn't a normal occurrence. He stepped outside, cautiously moving toward the source of the scream. Suddenly, from a distance, he saw a faint, flickering light. He decided to head toward it, hoping to find some answers. Min walked along the narrow path, the light from his flashlight illuminating only a small portion of the space around him. The forest became eerily cold and desolate. He kept moving, unaware that his steps were leading the family toward a mystery no one could explain. As he neared the source of the light, Min realized it wasn't a lamp or campfire, but a flickering green flame glowing in the dark forest. He stopped, hesitant to move closer, as the light had a strange pull that kept his eyes fixed on it. As the light grew closer, Min realized that the flame wasn't a normal object. It didn't emit any heat. In fact, the closer he got, the colder the air became. A shadowy figure appeared within the light. But when Min tried to approach it, the figure vanished into the air, leaving only the green flame. Min hesitated to get any closer, a strange and fearful feeling rising within him. He turned around and decided to return to his family. Min turned around and hurried back to his family. As he returned to the camp, the atmosphere around them remained eerily still. But the strange feeling lingered. Mai and the children were sitting near the campfire, but they looked uneasy. The whole family was silent, as if they were waiting for something to happen. Mai looked at Min with worried eyes and asked, "Do you feel that something's wrong since we arrived here? Everything feels different." Min sighed and nodded. "I feel it too. But we have to finish this trip. We can't panic now." The family continued sitting by the campfire, but the air grew colder and more eerie. Min decided to light a torch to add some light and try to ease the tension. But as soon as he lit the torch, a strange noise echoed from behind them. The family turned around and saw a shadowy figure standing just outside the illuminated area, its form too indistinct to make out clearly. Min and Mai exchanged looks, feeling a wave of confusion rise within them. The figure stood there, motionless, not moving. Min's family dared not speak, and the air became tense and suffocating. Suddenly, the figure disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind nothing but an eerie silence. Min decided to take the torch and head toward where the figure had vanished, hoping to find whoever or whatever had created this strange occurrence. Mai held tightly onto the children, unwilling to move from the safety of their spot. Min walked along the dark forest, the light from the torch weak, unable to dispel the darkness that enveloped him. He walked for a while, but saw no sign of the figure. However, when he reached an unfamiliar area in the forest, suddenly, the light from the torch flared brightly, illuminating a small circle around him. Within that circle, Min saw strange marks on the ground, resembling bizarre symbols, and a few abandoned items. These were not the traces of any animal or ordinary person. Min felt that something was very wrong. As Min approached the strange markings, the air around him grew heavier than ever. The symbols on the ground resembled ancient, bizarre sigils, causing him to feel a terrifying force behind them. The torch in his hand still shone brightly, but the light seemed insufficient to illuminate the surrounding space. A gentle breeze blew, carrying faint whispers from afar. Min turned around to look, but saw nothing. The feeling of unease only grew stronger. Suddenly, a noise came from behind Min. He quickly turned around but saw nothing except the vast darkness. Min decided not to hesitate any longer. He turned back to the campsite where his family was waiting. However, when he arrived, something strange had happened. Their campsite was no longer as it had been. Their tent had vanished, and instead, there was an empty patch of ground with no trace of the items they had left behind. Min stood frozen, feeling an overwhelming chill. Min was startled, running quickly back toward the strange markings in the forest. He hoped to find a logical explanation for what had happened. But as he walked for a while, there was nothing but eerie silence. Only darkness remained, and faint whispers could be heard from deep within the woods. He began to feel lost, unsure of where to go. Mai and the children were no longer there either. Min called out loudly, but only an echo responded. Min stopped, taking a deep breath to calm himself. He began to think logically. Maybe my family moved to another spot I didn't notice. He continued walking, hoping to find some clue that could help him locate the campsite. But as he ventured further, the surrounding space suddenly shifted. The trees around him became dark and lifeless, as if he was stepping into another world. Min walked through the eerie forest, each step echoing in the still air. The feeling of being watched made it impossible for him to stop worrying. Suddenly, he noticed an abandoned house appearing ahead. It wasn't like any other house in the area, with crumbling walls and shattered windows. He approached cautiously, his feet heavy with unease. As Min entered, the house suddenly lit up, dim light flickering from old oil lamps. The strange thing was, there was no one inside, but an unsettling feeling arose within him. Min walked deeper into the house, trying to find any clue that could explain the strangeness. Suddenly, he saw an old mirror hanging on the wall, reflecting his own image. But what was strange was that in the mirror, not only Min's reflection appeared, but also images of his wife and children, as though they were still with him, even though he knew they had disappeared. Min touched the surface of the mirror, and suddenly, the reflection began to change, turning into unfamiliar faces, as if souls were trapped within. Min and his family stood frozen in front of the strange transformation of the mirror. Min couldn't believe his eyes. In an instant, the mirror seemed to hold all the mysteries of the forest. The images in the mirror began to move, the trapped souls staring at him. Min felt as though an invisible force was pulling him into the mirror. Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind him. "We have been here for a long time." Min turned around, but saw no one. His entire family was left in complete silence. Min began to feel an intense urge to uncover the truth, but also a growing sense of fear. He stepped out of the abandoned house, but everything seemed different now. The forest around him became misty and unclear, as if all paths had vanished. Min stood still, unsure of what to do next. Everything seemed to revert to a point in space he couldn't escape from. Suddenly, the images of his wife and children appeared again, but this time, they didn't see him. They simply walked deeper into the forest, not turning back. Min stood staring into the darkness, unable to comprehend what was happening. The images of his wife and children remained faint before his eyes, and the silence around him made everything suffocating. He tried calling their names loudly, but his voice only echoed in the endless darkness, and no one answered. Suddenly, A powerful beam of light descended from above, forcing Min to close his eyes to protect himself from the blinding brightness. When he opened his eyes again, he realized he was no longer in the forest. When Min opened his eyes, he realized he was standing in a completely different space. The forest had vanished, replaced by a vast room, like a dark chamber with stone walls surrounding him. Faint light from ancient lamps illuminated the space, and in the center of the room stood a large stone table. Min stepped closer, and on the table lay a strange painting, a painting of his family. But this time, all the faces in the painting had become faded and unrecognizable. Min approached the stone table, and when he looked closely, he realized the painting wasn't just an ordinary work of art, but a living one. The faces in the painting seemed to change every second, shifting and becoming clearer with every moment. The painting appeared to be staring into his soul, making him feel as if he were being scrutinized, judged by the hollow eyes within. He turned around and saw a door open, but as he stepped toward it, Min realized that he could not leave. A voice echoed in the space, soft yet full of authority. "We've been waiting for you." Min turned around, but saw no one. A cold gust of wind blew through, and suddenly, everything seemed to freeze. He felt the silence surround him, as if this space had control over everything. Min finally realized that this wasn't a normal world. It was a space between dimensions, where souls were trapped and unable to escape. He was no longer the only one here.